Hey, my name is Jared Moon, and I'm part of a group of underground athletes you've probably never even heard of before. We don't rely on fancy equipment for training, and most of us don't even have gym memberships. In fact, our motivation comes from within. You see, we have jobs, families, and responsibilities, but we still have big goals, and they aren't getting achieved at a Globo gym. For that reason, we have to do things differently. Our training has to be smarter. We don't have every piece of equipment known to man or a ton of time to train, and we don't need it, because we are achieving amazing things without it. So how do we do it? If you ask your average personal trainer or gym goer, they'd call us crazy. Yet we're seeing results better than most every single day. And it's happening by blending mental training with physical training and becoming an athlete. What we call and welcome to Garage Gym Athlete.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Garage Gym Athlete Podcast. Jared Moon here with Joe Courtney. What's up, Joe?
Hey.
And this is episode, what are we at, 4?
4.
Getting deep into the season. We're going to start off with some more athletes hitting PRs. So who do you got for us?
So John didn't really have a last name on Facebook. Finally hit his 2 times bodyweight deadlift.
Nice.
Which is kind of a milestone. And Chris Donnell, he's been posting a lot of stuff. He hit 435 on the deadlift, and he is not a very big guy, and that's a pretty big weight.
He was on the Garage Gym Athlete podcast, right? Or I mean,
yep.
last season, season 4.
I think it was last season, or the season before. Either way, and he was at our Spartan race. So he's a endurance athlete, Spartan competitor, wanting to be, and he's still hitting his strength PRs.
That guy is maximizing his strength to weight ratios. That is for sure. He's hitting some insane numbers at a very low body weight. It's pretty impressive. All right. So today we are in. Congrats to all those hitting PRs. It's just so humbling to see. And I don't know. I need to post some of those videos of Chris, though. They're like, the dude's insane. He's doing like human flags and like deadlifting a house. And it's pretty awesome. All right, so what are we talking about today? Training in abnormal circumstances, situations, things like that. So what we have on the list, we will touch on training pregnant, and I'll explain that more in a minute, but also the reason I'm laughing about it is because how much do Joe and I actually know about training pregnant? The answer is very little. But we also talk about traveling, scaling, injuries, things like that, to help you guys be able to take that Garage Gym Athlete mentality into any area of your life. So let me start with everything that you should do while pregnant. So I'm actually obviously not an expert on this, but I have been working and talking with Ashley, one of our coaches, over her entire pregnancy, over the last 9 months on, training while pregnant, and it was impressive. So she did the entire 12-week cycle, this last 12-week cycle, and finished every single training session. Up to the very last one, which was the Into 3 fitness test. Like she did that. She did all the training sessions, completed the entire 12-week cycle, and then I don't know, just crushed it, and never really did anything too crazy. But the only modifications she changed, a lot of it she did were by feel. Like if it felt off or something, or if she felt off balance, she would normally make a personal modification, which she is a coach and she's been training for a long time, so she can do those things. The only thing I ever recommended to her we would talk about would be intensity levels. And that would be whether we're talking about redlining it in some sort of conditioning workout or redlining it on the barbell, up to 90+%, 85%, getting into those areas, whether it's weight on the barbell percent of your 1 rep max or really getting after it into a conditioning session. I told her to stay away from those things for the most part. That was my only real recommendation for her. And then she found out some other things that she could and could not do. Like I think running got pretty uncomfortable after a certain point, especially running anything for time or for speed. And so she did a lot more on the bike. I think at a certain point, even the rower got uncomfortable, which makes sense to me if you have like basically a ball, in front of you trying to, crunch forward. But really just being safe and listening to your body. Another recommendation I have is if you look at Ashley, we can have her on after things settle down and she adjusts to new baby life and everything, and we could talk more detail about it. But she's been training for a long time. Like she started doing CrossFit when we first started hanging out. When her husband and I go back to college, but we were also stationed in the same base for pilot training, and that's kind of how I know Ashley. But she started CrossFit back then, and that's like when Into 3 Fitness started too, all that jazz. So she's been training for a long time, like consistently training. And I really was okay with her basically sticking to the hard to kill track while pregnant. And the reason that it's like, who are you to judge? I'm kind of, I coach Ashley. Like we do weekly calls and everything like that. And I kind of helped her through this. And so my only recommendation is if you don't have a very large or long training age, like you haven't been training for very long, and you like just found out you're pregnant and you just started with us, like, maybe not something that you want to continue doing or at the highest intensity. You're going to have to scale a lot of things down. Just take things into like that into consideration.
Yeah, she got pretty creative when it came to scaling stuff. She would still do the burpees up until her belly got in the way, and then she did it onto like blocks or something.
Yeah, she was. And that's what I call the garage gym athlete mentality. Is there's no like, it's kind of that DIY, like I'm gonna figure this out no matter what mentality, and that's why I feel like I can connect with so many of our garage gym athletes, because it's just like, yeah, I'm not gonna make excuses or complain or whatever. I'm just gonna get it done. It might be getting it done in a different way, but I'm gonna get it done. So that's my advice on pregnant. Joe, do you have anything to add?
Ditto.
Yeah, ditto.
It's about all I got.
Moving on. All right.
Yeah.
So after pregnant, injured is something that we actually deal with way more than pregnant most of the time. Someone coming into the program with a nagging injury, or they have some sort of limitation that they already know about, or perhaps they acquired, and they want to know how to work around that. So I'm going to let you start wherever you want with that topic, and I'll chime in.
Yeah, this is something I actually know a lot more about because I've been injured a lot in the past, for one reason or another. So just recently, back in March, I strained my coccyx or whatever. It's like the tailbone that goes to the hip. So basically,
one more time,
strained my coccyx.
All right, there it is.
It does exist. I did that it kind of started during a ruck, and then I really felt the pop during it. I was just like a warm up, back squats. And so it's basically the tailbone and hip area. I wasn't able to squat, bend over, all that pain. It was pretty bad for a month, 2 cycles ago. The first month I scaled everything back. So the weight, I wouldn't go, I was basically just doing very slow tempo air squats just to move through the movement, because sitting back and doing nothing when you have certain injuries is just going to make it worse, or you're just not going to get any better. So going through and getting some blood flow, because we mentioned this before, is blood flow is kind of how you heal. So I would do very slow air squats, see what I felt. I would do lateral box step ups, or just short low box step ups to make sure that I'm okay. I still want to make sure my hamstrings are getting flexed, my butt's getting flexed, all that stuff. But because I don't want to lose all the progress that I made as well. So getting that blood flow helps, and doing some mobility and doing some active recovery was kind of key to working it in, whether it's light cardio. We had good timing. This is like almost right when I got a rower. So I was able to do a little bit of rowing, not very intense, nothing powerful. But that helped. But also, it was kind of a blessing in disguise, because I was able to address other past issues. I've had shoulder issues in the past, and I was having a hard time getting in the right position overhead and just shoulder weakness. So during that time where I would just move a little bit to recover my lower body, I was really tackling my shoulder limitations. So I was doing a lot of we're just talking about them. Crossover symmetry. There it is. Yeah. I was doing a lot of crossover symmetry to just really, because I also couldn't press very much, because pressing, you're standing, and I felt it in my back and my lower back and everything. So I would sit and do some presses, but I also did a lot of banded and a lot of static holds, because that wasn't very taxing on the lower back. It wasn't it just didn't hurt me at all. So, but it still was able to fatigue my muscles enough to feel like I worked out and all. And then because it was lower back, I wanted to make sure my core was still getting strong and staying stable. So I did a lot of planks, which is also more holds. So I didn't do a lot with weights. It just transitioned to stability, if anything. So I wasn't getting stronger overall or more powerful, but I was working on my stability to work all of the little tiny areas all around. And then once my back started feeling better, I was good to go. I didn't really have a lot of time to make up because I still kept doing stuff.
See all those different spokes that came off of your hub there is like one little injury and Joe's doing like 100 different things, and that's what you should be doing. Like you should be thinking about all these different things. Joe's been in the game for a long time, so he kind of knows all that stuff. Focusing on stability and not wanting things to get weak. But the main takeaway I got from that is like some people get injured and they just they're like, oh, I'm out. Like I'm done. I'm not going to do anything. And obviously that's like the worst case. Like that's the worst thing that you could possibly do is to stop. And I do that to a degree. Like when I get injured, I do whatever hurts to do. I don't do that thing anymore. Like I'm sure that you probably did not and have not done any rucking with a kettlebell in the backpack since.
Lesson learned.
Yeah. And so some recent injuries I've had, this one is like not super recent, but it's like 2-3 years ago, hurt my shoulder really badly. And we talked about me doing crossover symmetry or getting surgery. It was kind of like borderline. And even the crossover symmetry was not like a overnight fix. I mean, it took, I don't know, maybe 24 weeks worth of use, 16 to 24 weeks worth of use to like really, but I could slowly tell that it was getting better. That's why I kept on it for so long. But I really stopped pressing overhead just because there was some pain every time I would press overhead, and it was not like this uncomfortable pain. It was more like this sharp, like, oh, that's not natural type of pain. And so I kept working on mobility and doing recovery exercises. I got a lot weaker in my press. Like some of the lowest it's been in a decade by 3 years ago when I finished, not because I wasn't really pressing overhead, but does that mean I wasn't pressing at all? No, I was still trying to do really lightweight kneeling bottoms up kettlebell press type stuff, stability work, still working lateral raises, front raises, plate raises, thing I could do to still work my deltoids and my shoulders out. And I couldn't even bench press at that time either. So just doing something is always going to be important. And then the same thing in very recent history. At the beginning of this year, 2018, I hurt my foot very badly. When I moved to Asheville, I did some trail running in a shoe I shouldn't have been wearing, and basically fractured the outside of my foot, and I couldn't run. There's a lot of running in our program if you choose to run, and I like running most of the time because I feel like it's more metabolically demanding than most anything else. And so it was the first cycle, January to March, that I basically rode that entire cycle. I got really good at rowing, but I stay away from the things that are hurting me, and I just do other stuff. And that sounds like really simple, but I think that on top of everything Joe said about like making sure that you're not getting weaker in other areas or developing some new like secondary instability or issue because you're trying to neglect one thing are all things that you want to keep in mind if you injure yourself. But keep moving, keep doing something, keep training, and just modify as much as you can.
Yeah, I think this helped with so did you have to think about so when we talk about scaling and switching out stuff because of injuries, did you just always assume row, or did you kind of look at what the workout was and make sure the stimulus is there for the row unless there was something else you could do?
Oh yeah, so I rode a majority of the time. Having wrote the program, I would make sure that the stimulus matched. But what I found was when we were doing shorter duration stuff, say 60-minute bursts, something like that, where I wanted a certain level of intensity programmed. So either say I needed you to get to 85% in 90 seconds, and 85%, whether that's RPE or whether that's your max heart rate, was basically impossible for me to do on a rower. Like in that short time frame, it couldn't happen. And so I would switch to Airdyne because I never have a problem getting my heart rate extremely elevated in a very short amount of time on the Airdyne. So yeah, I would make some switches like that based off of the stimulus that was written in the programming, because you have to take certain things into account like that.
Yeah, and even without injuries, not everybody has these things at home. And so when I got hurt, it was just kind of happy timing because we had just gotten a rower. So I couldn't run with my back injury, but I could row a little bit. And then we got an Airdyne, and the dyne really helped. But because, especially for those short sprints, and there's times where you can sub in burpees. But
Yeah.
the best part about that injury was because of the rotation of the hip or whatever, I couldn't do burpees, so I had to scale my burpees to something else.
Lucky.
So that was good. But yeah, it's just discovering whatever the right stimulus is to scale to what you need, whether it's an equipment issue, whether it's a injury issue, is really important, especially for garage gym athletes who don't have everything at their disposal.
Well, it's funny. I forgot who it was, but this comes up a lot in our Facebook group. Is I can't run today. I can't do this. What should I do? I mean, I think I came up as soon as this morning, like as early as this morning, or as recent as this morning, should I say. I think someone was asking about sled pushes, right? Sled pushes instead of is it running?
The sprints.
Yeah,
Sprints.
the energy system failure test.
What I'm going to do soon.
Yeah, I'm actually doing that soon too on the Airdyne. But you do have to take into account, like Joe saying, kind of the stimulus. Like, what are we looking to achieve, and will this get it done? I know there was one athlete too who, without even asking anybody, he just had that garage gym athlete DIY mentality. He couldn't run anymore. Did not have access to. I think he had shin splints or something like that. He didn't have access to rower, Airdyne. Very common situation. A lot of people don't have those things. And he just did burpees. Like, he didn't ask me about it. He didn't ask you about it. But I just thought it was insane because it actually worked in the programming at the time. It's like, okay, do 2 blocks of running. And he just like, okay, I'm going to do 2 blocks of burpees. and I'm like, okay, and 2 blocks being 20 minutes, right? So it's just like, really, dude? You just did like 20-minute AMRAP burpees because you couldn't run. And I love the mentality. That's exhausting. But I think it's not, burpees are not always the answer. I think most people will rejoice in that. But because it does depend on where we're trying to get the heart rate and what's the duration and everything. But, we have in the shred track this week a 50-minute block. Like, I hope no one's going to be doing 50 minutes of burpees. But how many burpees would that be? That'd be a lot of burpees.
Over 9,000.
Yeah, 9,000 exactly. Actually, I just calculated it.
If burpees are the answer, then you need to find a new question.
And then how about how about scaling in general? I think that was the last thing that we kind of wanted to hit, was just people. Well, scaling and travel. Those are both kind of abnormal situations. So let's start with travel. What do you recommend people do when traveling?
I can get creative. I know Liz and I like to hike when we travel and stuff. So sometimes if we go on a long hike, then it's kind of just counted up because it's 2-3 hours. But if you're on a hike, you can carry some rocks, whether it's a really big one, heavy one, or just 2 in separate hands. So at least you're working your forearm, something. And just a lot of just bodyweight stuff you can do when you travel. Most people, especially now with Airbnb, you're not going to have access to a gym. So see if you can do 20 minutes of bodyweight stuff.
Yeah, I think getting something done. Like, we do have our no gear track for athletes who have absolutely no gear, but it's still a pretty serious program. Like, it's still going to take you 50 minutes to get done and, upwards of an hour. So, like, when you're on vacation or something, you're either going to have the time for that or you won't. Kind of depends on where your vacation is and how disciplined you may or may not want to be on vacation. So there's that option. But like Joe said, like, just getting something done, trying to be a little bit more active. I think like beach vacations are like the worst. Like, you're supposed to they're not actually bad vacations, but I'm talking about for like activity level, because you could literally I love beach vacations. Let me clear that up. So but you can just literally wake up, like, eat breakfast, and then go sit at the pool, go sit at the beach, eat lunch, sit at the pool, sit at the beach, and then come inside and basically do nothing that whole day. So you either have to plan a workout or like you said, like, okay, let's go for a run on the beach and kind of like work it into the vacation as opposed to trying to do something super structured while you're here. And I think that's where most people are finding it challenging on vacation.
I think one of the easiest things that we usually do is just do some sort of upper body, even if it's like a bodybuilding routine, or like do different kinds of push-ups. And if you can find a place to do a pull-up or any kind of weights, just doing upper body stuff, because so we don't vacation very well. We don't relax. We just go and do. We're always walking around and doing something. So our legs are going to get plenty of work around. We're probably still going to sweat doing something. So the upper body just kind of balances that out. Yeah, we usually need a day or two of break after our vacation because we just don't stop doing stuff.
Moving around so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's typically what I recommend when people travel. And the thing that I am recommending more and more now, like I said, we had the webinar and banded training, and we've talked a lot about it, is that's really like the only thing you need to travel with is a band. You know, if you're talking about, like we've talked about kettlebells and all this like stuff, I'm starting to think like just a band, like a good resistance band. I'm talking about like a legit band. I think they're like 43 inches, you know, the big ones that you can use with barbells and stuff. Like get a heavy one. Because I think I talked to Brandon Webb. He was on the Better Humanology podcast, recently recorded that with him, former Navy SEAL, really great guy. And he said that's all he trains with now when he travels is a band. And I'm seeing more and more use of that, being able to do banded push-ups, and you can do curls with them and presses and squats, and like you can actually wrap a circular band around, your shoulders and stand on the bottom and do resistance squats. And if you have a really thick band, that's actually still challenging when you get up to the 20 and 30 rep range. So band for travel is like my go-to these days, and that's what I recommend for most people.
Yeah, I haven't tried that one out yet, but I probably will come December because we're doing a longer Christmas trip over to the East Coast. So the band thing, we'll have to definitely give it a shot. I did knew a girl back in my old CrossFit gym. They would travel a lot, and no matter where she went, whether it was driving or flying, she would take her 35-pound kettlebell.
Dang.
Like going through TSA, paying for check bag, and she's like, "I don't care. We're going to the beach for a week, but I want my kettlebell there. I want to be able to lift." I'm like, all right, that's awesome.
Well, that's what like you're the trip you have coming up. I've done this to more than one family member. I ship a kettlebell to their house. So I'll ship like a 1.5 pood or 2 pood kettlebell to their house, and like if I'm going to be there for like 2 to 3 weeks, and that'll just be I'm doing one man one kettlebell. While I'm there, which is an amazing program, and you don't even have to go buy it. I'm just.
Shameless plug.
I actually, so when I was doing a bunch of no gear track, and then I transitioned for about 2 to 3 weeks of one man one kettlebell because I finally got a kettlebell, and it had been over a year since I'd done the program, and I was like, this program is so legit, like it's so challenging, and you only need one kettlebell. It's like one of my favorite programs that I've written. It's really cool. All right, man, scaling. Did we want to talk about scaling in general? Because we kind of already talked about how to scale when you're injured or like what you should do. But if someone's coming in with like a known limitation on scaling, so I can't press overhead because my shoulders are broken or something like that. Like, I don't know. What do you recommend when scaling, big picture wise?
So, I mean, I guess it depends on what the workout. It always depends on what the workout is, and people can always help posting in groups and stuff to switch it up. But if it's strength, then think of something of that same, if you want to do it, just if it is a shoulder overhead limitation, then do some sort of, whether it's bench or a single arm kettlebell press, because of the barbell, you can't quite get overhead, then see if you can still isolate the muscle somehow to get the work in, whether it's working on the tricep and the chest separately or shoulder or what. So you might just have to get a little creative at breaking down whatever you might be doing. What about you?
And I agree with that 100%. So going back, we've discussed this, I think, on one episode so far this season, is the intent. Knowing the intent of the exercise, why it was programmed. And if you're listening to my athlete briefs, most of the time you are going to know the intent of the exercise, why it's programmed. So you don't have to be an exercise physiologist to figure this shit out. You can just be like, okay, yeah, this is a shoulder movement, or, I'm involving my triceps, my deltoids, and my chest. So like, how else could I do that without having to do this movement that hurts me? So knowing the intent of what we're trying to do, why we're programming it. We talked about stimulus a little bit, but the big part on scaling, and I kind of hit on this when we talked about pull-ups, is however you're going to scale or sub, be consistent in that. Like, say it's just straight scaling, like scaling weight. Say you just need to scale weight down because it's too challenging, and say that it was programmed 75-pound thrusters, and you're like, I did 45-pound thrusters. Don't add any weight to that for a while, because if it was a conditioning workout that involved thrusters, the goal is not to keep adding weight to the thruster. The goal is to see how much quicker you can do under the same load. And so be consistent with how you scale. And then the same with scaling a movement when you have to fully sub. So going back to pull-ups, like I said, pick your sub movement that you want to do for pull-ups and do that one thing for 12 weeks. That goes for any substitution that you have to do. I normally recommend the same in conditioning. Like if I'm like, hey, I want you to run, and you're like, I can't run, my foot's hurt, I have to row. Then I want you to row every week that this is programmed, because everything that we do is a progression. And so I don't want to, like, this week see how fast you can do, rowing workout, and then next week a running workout, and then the week after that an airdyne workout. Like, if you're changing the stimulus like we talked about, that's okay. But if you're just subbing things out because for fun, then it doesn't always make sense. Sometimes you got to see how much better you can get at something by sticking with it for a long period of time.
Yeah, if you can't bench, throwing in bicep curls aren't really gonna do much.
Right. Yeah. That's like and that happens. Throwing in some bicep curls here and there. But that's it, man. That's all I have for this episode. You have anything else?
No.
All right, we'll call it. Thanks for listening. We're out.
Sweet.